you doing today? It's Jim Martin, and today I've seen a few videos lately that are in a theme, and they're by some of my kind of YouTube mentors from afar, so to speak. It's never too late, and how they reinvented themselves at various points of their lives. Where I was coming into adulthood was that I had a career in family business where we did audio and video production and post-production for clients really kind of all over the country, and some international work as well. That was a good job and a natural path. One that really wasn't aligned to the college degree that I got. My undergraduate degrees in political science and history, two subjects which fascinated me at the time. I had one of those moments in life where you have to make some choices. My initial desire at that point in my life was to be an intelligence analyst for the Central Intelligence Agency or someplace like that. And I had taken some steps down the road towards doing that. However, my dad got really sick and ended up having open heart surgery, which at the time was extremely serious and had a very lengthy recovery time. As a able-bodied family member, it was my duty, as I saw it, to step into that role and help. So I stepped away from that path and began to work as a kind of a jack of all trades within that business, which of course I knew well. When you have a family business, you get involved loading boxes and doing all the things pretty early on. And so I knew the component parts, I knew the people involved, and knew some of the customers and things like that. So I got into that, I got married, we had kids, which all kind of just locks you into that track because you got a family to take care of, and that was a natural kind of progression. It was also very much in keeping with my thinking at the time, which was I was a person who took my prompts and took my leads from other people. I didn't trust my ambitions. I didn't have a faith or a confidence that I could pursue them and achieve them. For who knows why. Let's get a psychologist in here or something. What that led me to was a very stable and useful position where I had a lot to do, very busy, and it supported my family, and I don't regret any of it. As time passed, kids growing up, things like this, I began to think occasionally about how I could do something else. Now let's kind of move forward a little bit. When I'm 33 years old, routinely flying around the country, handling events, doing these kinds of things, and working mostly as a salesperson, but also some technical stuff and some strategy things. Again, family business, anybody who's been in one gets it. A demanding job, a lot of hours, all those kinds of things. And I just found myself not captivated by it. And that's not a place to be. My parents were starting to step away from that business, and I had a leadership role and ownership in that business. And so you can't be in this place where you're unsure, or I don't know, or I'm not 100% in. I didn't really know that at the time, but I felt it. This is right around 2001. The terrorist attacks of 9/11 really reignited my desire, compelled by patriotism, to try to do that. I was stymied at a lot of turns. I really didn't tell anybody about that because that would be deviating from the expectations that others had for me. Again, I don't know. I'm better now. I kept doing what I was doing. We had to kind of forge a path for that business through the economic troubles of that period of time. And we were able to successfully do that. I still had this nagging sense, like I don't think I can be in this long term. It just isn't a thing. But I wasn't quite sure where to go with it. And ultimately, I chose to continue to explore that government service path, but also to go back and go to school and get a master's degree. Now, I was, kind of blue skying it at the time. I chose to return to my original field of political science, entered a master's degree program in international relations, which at the time, I didn't really know what was going to come of it, how that was going to work. Kind of inspired by the fact that my wife at the time had become a firefighter and a paramedic, and she was really kind of an inspiration for me, and also remember that whole permission of other people thing. And so I thought, well, I could do this, which would at least give me an outlet other than like arguing with the TV. I did go back and get a master's degree, and I found the entire process really inspiring. I ended up working on some research projects. Another thing that spun out of that as a possibility, because I began to tell my faculty advisor in my master's program kind of what do I want to do with this degree? Well, this is kind of what I'm thinking. I ended up being able to do a couple of internships as open source Intel officer for US Stratcom, which was enlightening, interesting, useful. I learned a lot of things. And that gave me some cachet to begin to be able to apply for some jobs. Interestingly enough, because I had these business networking kinds of connections, I had come into contact with a guy who was a pretty high up executive with SAIC, Science Applications International Corporation. He took a liking to me for some reason, and at one point or another in there, I got a job offer. But hold up. The same kind of time frame, I had the opportunity to teach some classes. I enjoyed that. I had participated in some research projects. I enjoyed that. And this is all happening at the same time, which is, I look back on that period of time and I'm like, I don't know how I did any of that. I am way too tired for that now. We had reached a point where I was applying for PhD programs, and I was also on this sort of wandering track towards this position with SAIC. I had done a few interviews and submitted some materials and done all these things. And the day came when I'm sitting there with a job offer from SAIC that paid extremely well, and a funded offer from Florida State University and the other to be in a PhD program. I had to have a really serious talk with family about this because I was not sure what to do. The very clear and responsible path would have been to take the SAIC job. I ultimately chose to pursue the PhD instead. Now, this is a significant amount of risk, for me professionally, personally, everything else. And it was not a risk that I would have taken 10 years before that. And so where did that come from? I gained that confidence in my ability to do these things through saying yes to a whole bunch of opportunities and trying things out and seeing if I like them. Probably for the first time in my life, of really saying, like, what is it that I want to do and how does that fit into a larger structure of family, friends, everything else, but primarily thinking, I want to do something different. That choice, which again, risky, that was an incredible experience. It had been a long time since I had done math. And if you told anyone that I was going to be studying higher order advanced mathematics, and that's the kind of political science that I tend to enjoy. If you told anybody I was going to do that when I was in high school or in college, they would have laughed at you and said, you got the wrong Jim Martin. However, that's what I pursued. It was a place with incredibly high standards, very vocal and about that. There was no competition at that place, but you were competing with yourself to maintain the standard that they set for you. If you fell below that standard, they would kick you out. Of the 12 people who entered with me after the first semester, I'm sure I was down there. I was definitely not in the top 6. I was languishing down there a bit, but I worked my butt off. That was something that I had in my toolkit, is that I can work. And the other thing I had in my toolkit from being a salesperson was that I knew how to connect with people. I knew how to go and ask people questions and not take things personally. When somebody would say, you're not doing well on this, I would be like, how can I fix that? And I took those answers to heart to the best that I could and put those into action. I reached the end of the first semester. I was completely exhausted, and I really, in some ways, didn't care if they kicked me out or not. I had done everything that I possibly could to maximize my effort. It was below the standard somewhat. And after some reflection during that kind of holiday break, I went back down there. They didn't kick me out. I went back down there. I went to the director of the graduate program. I went to the folks that were the most challenging faculty. And I'm like, look, this is where I'm at. How can I improve? And they told me, and they actually threw me a bone a little bit and gave me some incentives to just stick in there. You're going to be okay. And for some reason, that turned it around. There was almost like a gear shift in my brain that flipped after that first semester of intense. And I'm talking 110, 120 hours a week of work. That turned the trick for me, and I was able to really never really feel like I wasn't going to make it after that. Towards the end of that process, it's like, oh, I need to find a job. And fortunately, I had maintained relationships with the school that I went to for my master's, which happened to be in the town where I live, and I was able to make some connections and get some things going there. So I was looking at other positions. My advisor at Florida State was helping me look for other positions. I had some interviews, kind of a close run thing in the end. There was a job that had shown a lot of interest in me, and I talked to them some, and their window for hiring was coming up. But ultimately, I was hired on at the university I now teach at. That's not what you're supposed to be doing when you're like, I don't know, what was I then? 45, 44, 43, something like that. Most people are really settled in by that point. And I've just made this massive career change, along with the fact that in the same sort of time frame, found a buyer for our business, sold it, done consulting for 6 months so that they could, if they had questions or would need to see how to do something or whatever, all in about 6 months from that period. I finished my PhD shortly thereafter. I'm working, everything's great. Really, in the beginning of that, I'm just learning what is it to be a professor, really? Because I taught some classes before and things like that, but actually working in academia is a different story. And so you learn how all the different pieces and parts work and do all that kind of stuff. And again, that kind of what I had been taught as a young person of making connections, going up and saying hi to people when you go into big rooms and things like that, I think helped me at least feel more comfortable and not get kind of isolated and introverted, which is an easy thing for academics to do in many cases. I said yes when I was asked to do things. One of the things I was asked to do was to take on an administrative post in addition to my faculty one. At the time, the director of the program was like, you have to do this because nobody else can do this. and I was like, well, I'm happy to be here. Sure, I'll do it. So I took it on. And I've done it for many years up until this year. Ultimately sought out a mentor who's a retired faculty member. And I'm like, look, I have tenure. I've been promoted. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know if I want to continue to pursue promotion, which comes with a little bit of money, if you didn't know that. I didn't know if I wanted to do that or not. And so I was talking to them about this and they were like, oh, you absolutely should. And I said, yeah, but if I do that, I've got to play this game of going to the conferences and presenting at the things and being on the committees about paperwork and all this kind of stuff. And she said, absolutely no, you should not do any of those things. You should do the things that interest you, that are cool to you, and let the chips fall where they may when ultimately you decide to pursue this. And I was like, I can do that? And she was like, absolutely. Now, here's another step. So I just started reorienting towards, I'm going to do my job, obviously, to the best of my ability, but I'm also going to prioritize doing these interesting things. But I also didn't really think about this administrative post, that it was taking up about 20% of my time or more. I had always been doing it, and I had no ego connection to it or anything like that. I had no ambitions of normally somebody would be an assistant director and they would move up and direct a program and then perhaps move up to be a dean someday or something like that. I already ran a business. I managed people, processes, and things. I didn't get a PhD so that I could do that again. So I had this realization when I was talking to my girlfriend, who's been also a very steady source of inspiration for me, because she has taken many chances throughout her professional life to make changes which probably seem very disparate and probably risky, but she always seemed to navigate those with a lot of chutzpah, let's say. I don't know what word I'm struggling for, but that was a great, here's another person in my life. Oh, okay, they've taken risks. I'm used to taking some risks, and I thought, I need to step away from this position because it doesn't serve these larger professional goals. So what are those professional goals? Well, I'm in the midst of writing a book with a colleague of mine. I might have mentioned that a couple other times, and that's really coming along really well. It's with a publisher, and we have to send in the final version coming up in January. And YouTube has also been an exciting adventure for me that I started about a year ago, to have a voice and to reach out and to connect with people like everybody who's watching this. I want to continue to do that and expand upon that, do this book, perhaps see what spins out of that. And then there's some other opportunities for leading workshops, doing some things like that at the university, which also has a financial component to it, but they're driven by me. These are my choices that I made to pursue. That's amazingly freeing kind of place. One that, again, I'm 56 years old. You're really probably not supposed to do things like that then, but I'm doing it again. I'm taking risks. I'm putting these things out there. They're calculated, they're measured. They're safer than some of the risks that I took, say, 10 or 15 years ago. But there they are. And the important thing to remember about my story is that I've had imposter syndrome this whole freaking time. It's been incredibly challenging kind of place for me in many spans of my life. And somehow everything kind of worked out if I made the right choices and said yes and moved forward. You can do that too. You can change the trajectory of what you're doing. You don't even necessarily have to have faith that it's all going to turn out. They might turn out. I would love to be a rock guitar player. That never panned out. This whole dream, at one point a dream, became reality, and then I get to make choices because I have options to choose from. That's something that anybody can do. So if you have some kind of dream, explore it, think about it, absolutely study it, but take some actions and get involved somehow, even if it's just on the margins, which is exactly what I did. Just take a chance and see what happens. And if you like it, keep doing the things. You'll probably end up being pretty good at them, and you'll have more opportunities. And that's exactly what my story is. And I hope this kind of adds to that conversation and maybe provides you with a little inspiration. So thanks for spending some time with me today. Have a great one. Thank you.